So, welcome to this open question and answer about finishing. I'm not sure where it's going to take me. Part of that is up to you guys, and I'm hoping that you will put in to the comments questions about finishing. Make sure that you put 2 question marks in front of it because that's how I know what are questions and what are just comments. Please ask your question in complete sentences because it might take me a while to get to your answer. And if you're just commenting about what I'm saying at the minute, after I've moved on to 2 or 3 other comments, I might not know what your comment means. So give me complete sentences, pretend that I'm reading it after seeing nothing else, and then that'll make for a better question. Don't ask your question more than once. And what else? Oh, what I want to encourage you to do, somewhere I've got, is it this one? Yes, subscribe to this channel. And when you click subscribe, then click the little bell next to it and you'll get an alert anytime I go live. So that means even if it's the middle of the day and I don't have a live lesson planned, if I go live on YouTube, you'll get a notification and you'll know. Okay, I try to send out reminder emails, but that doesn't always happen. I did one today, but again, that doesn't always happen. You must, in order to comment, if you're trying to comment but you can't seem to get to the comments, it's because you're not logged in. YouTube requires you to be logged in order to leave a comment. So take care of that. And then later on, when you've got something to say in the comments, you'll have an easier way of doing that. Now, what I want to talk about first, while you guys are putting in your comments, fingers crossed, is about the process of finishing. Okay? I know a lot of people will hook rugs, but don't necessarily get on to finishing them right away. And I'm going to challenge you to grab one rug, just one. Pick out one out of your collection that hasn't gotten finished yet and bring it with you to the hook-in tomorrow. Okay, so I do a Zoom hook-in. I really, really love this format because your camera and your microphone is on and you can talk to me and other people can talk to you, and it's more like a classroom setting. And what I want to do is help every person who brings a rug to the hook-in for finishing, help them to do the very next step, because that's all we're going to concentrate on. What's the next step? So whether it's you don't know what finish to do, you don't know how to steam it, you don't know how much to cut off, you don't have a sewing machine, I will help you solve all of those problems. Just bring it to the hook-in tomorrow and we will talk specifically about your rugs. Now, full disclosure, this is actually a test for a format that I've been wanting to experiment with for a while. So come join me for this first experimentation. And in the meantime, bring your hooking, sit there and hook with us if you don't have a rug to finish. And I will see you there tomorrow. I'll give you more information about how to join the hook-in at the end of this video. Okay, so got some questions coming in. Yay! Let's get started. Sonia is saying, I finished 2 5x5 squares. I didn't leave enough between them to do the fold forward. What would you do? So in order to do the fold forward, you need 2 times 1 1/4 inches. So Sonia, I'm assuming that you don't have that 2.5 inches to do the fold forward finish. So probably one of the things that you could do, it's going to depend on how you're going to display these at the end. You might simply cut off what you can and simply fold the backing to the back and stitch it down. And then particularly if you're going to end up mounting it in a shadow box or on a piece of foam core, something along that line. So what I would recommend is that you always come to the hook-in anyways. So bring that piece to the hook in, and let's talk about your project specifically. Okay, you'll be able to show it to me, show it to the rest of the group, and we'll be able to get in there and figure out exactly what's going to be the best bet for that. For those of you who are planning on doing that kind of thing, and I've already cut mine apart. I had a couple of pieces that I was hooking small on a piece, and you always want to leave 2.5 inches, which is this little measuring tool. Put that over my eyes so it come on, focus. Come on, camera. There it goes. This little measuring tool, you can get it on my website. If you're placing an order, it's absolutely free. Just add it to your order, and I will add it to your package. Diane is saying, do you plan how you're going to finish your project from the very beginning? I often do. It depends on what it is. Like now, if it's a pencil pouch, it has to end at a particular size. So yeah, you better figure out what kind of finish you're going to do. How big is that finish? So that once it's all done, it fits perfectly on the pencil pouch. Now, other things that it really doesn't matter what the final size is, then you can kind of play with it once you get there. Something that happens before you actually get to the finish is when you're putting your pattern on the backing, I leave lots and lots of room on the edge, because after I finish a piece and I mark it and I'm cutting it off, I really like to have like an 18-inch piece that I'm cutting off, because then I can use it to hook small things. If I have a 6-inch piece, I can't do a darn thing with it. 4 inches, no, it's all garbage. It all goes straight into the trash. Where if I do an 18-inch margin minimally, that's what I use personally, then what I cut off is big enough, it'll still fit on my frame. I can get a whole nother life out of it and move on. But if while I'm hooking, I go, it would look really good if I put a border this big on it, I can do that because I'll still have plenty of room to finish that particular one. So it's my insurance to sort of change my mind on what the design is and how that rug particularly finishes. I've never regretted leaving too much backing. I have definitely regretted not leaving enough. So the backing is really cheap. Even if you use the most expensive, which is linen, it's still cheaper than a yard of wool. And we don't hesitate at paying for that. So spend a little bit more, get a little bit more real estate, and have a nice big backing so that you don't have to scrimp on it later on. Okay, Jane says, I'm just about to finish a 14-inch chair seat round. Any tricks on doing a fold forward finish with whipped edge? The biggest tricks, and I was looking once again, I know I did a lesson on how to finish a round rug, but I can't seem to find it to give you like a date if you're a member of the Rug Cooking Journey, so you could go back and see it. I need to find that lesson, but in big, broad steps, the most important thing is to take and draw in the ditch, make a rectangle around your round. Very first step. Doesn't make sense, but make it a rectangle. Then measure the diagonals, and then when you steam it, make sure those diagonals have the same measurement, so you don't end up with an egg or an oval. Okay, so ideally you do this when you first design the rug and you first draw the round, but if you didn't, do it after the fact and then make sure it's steamed in such a way that it is a perfect round and it's not skewed one way or the other and it's straight up and down the way it needs to be. Then when you're doing the finish and before you cut it off, I would draw the little boundaries of that by taking my little measuring piece and putting a dot, and then moving it around, put a dot, move it around, put a dot, and then connect those lines so that I have a circle that's 1.25 inches all the way around the round. Now, and I'm doing this after it's been steamed once, and it is absolutely perfectly dry, meaning you've let it sit for like a week. Okay, don't skimp on this step. Then what I do is inside that pencil or marker line that I drawn where I'm going to be cutting it, before I cut it, I do a row of straight stitching. Seamstress would call it stay stitching. It's a way to prevent that fabric that once it's cut on the bias from stretching. Okay, seamstresses will do it at the top of a sleeve. It's that same principle. Back tack it, stitch it all the way around, about 1/4 inch or so inside the line, then cut it off, then zigzag it. So now you're ready to do your first row of fold forward, and I really need to make a sample piece so that I can show this. But it's basically fold it forward, and then fold it forward, and then fold it forward. You're making little pleats, much smaller than what I've made here, but you're just sort of gathering it up. When you're doing it around, or if you're doing it around corners, like you do here for the pencil pouch, you can do nice big 1/2 inch stitches up here on the straightaway. But when you get down here where it's curved, you're going to move your stitches closer together because you need a little bit more control. And then you're just going to sort of push that fabric together without making too many pleats. And you're just going to push it together and stitch it down, and then do that all the way around the rug the first time. The second time, you're going to fold it in. You're going to be doing the same thing. This is one time where I think basting is going to be so much easier in the long run than pins are, because I don't think you're going to get that level of control. I don't use pins. I don't use clamps, mainly because I think your thread gets tangled up in it when you're trying to do the whipping. So I just baste it down. It takes a little bit longer up front, but it makes the whipping part so much more enjoyable. So that really quick is the way to go with that. And Jan, your name doesn't look familiar, but if you're a member of the Rug Cooking Journey, just email me and I'll tell you which replay that lesson is in, because I need to find that anyways. Okay, Paula says, can you please show your method of the double fold to finish a hooked rug? Thank you. I think you're talking about the fold forward finish, right? And there's a great article or a great article on my website at cindygayrughooking.com/FF. Let me do this. I don't know how big that is. Okay, so it shows up nice and big, but it's kind of, why can't I move it? Well, there it is. Hopefully you can see that. Maybe if I move out of the way, you can see it a little bit better. It's basically my website /FF for fold forward. Now, if you are in the Rug Cooking Journey, then your best bet is to go to the dashboard, go to the basics course, and then go to finishing, because in there's actually a PDF that you can print out. But let me give you sort of the 11th story preview of how that finish works. Okay, how do I get rid of this now that I've done that? Here we go. Okay, so this is what the finish ends up looking like. Okay, it's a nice clean finish on the front and also on the back. You don't need a lot of material. You just need thread and yarn. So that makes that perfect from there. There's no rug tape to have to shrink or pre-fade. There's none of that you have to do. You really, other than the basting, you're really only going around the rug once. Okay, I don't really count the basting because I don't think it takes that long. So what you do first is you're going to cut it off to size. Okay, this one will give you an idea. So what I did is I took my little measuring tool and stuck it right there, marked it, drew a line, and I cut it off. I have not zigzagged it. And there's a whole process on zigzagging because you want to do something special to the corners. And I'll let you read the article to get the details on that. And then you fold it down and you stitch it. You fold it down again and you stitch it, and then you whip. So here it is in those steps. Okay, we're here, whoops, here it's folded once, and then here you can see it's folded twice. Also down here at the bottom, which is now, this is backwards as I'll get out. Here we go. So this is what it looks like when you start whipping. And I like it stitched down like that because then my yarn doesn't get tangled up in needles or clips or pins. And it just makes it so much easier. I see people struggling, and it's like, yeah, the clips are pretty and they're really cool. And I have some, but I don't use them for finishing, okay? So just baste the sucker down. It's so much easier. So I would recommend that you give that a whirl and just go through that article, and that'll give you step by step. The PDF that is inside the rug cooking journey that members can print out is 14 pages long. So it's like a little mini book. It tells you everything you need to know, okay? So, Patrice is saying, do you have any hints for doing a penny rug tongue method of finishing for a table mat? Not a whole lot, mainly because I've never done that finish. It doesn't appeal to my aesthetic. What I would do if I were to do one is I would make sure it would be easily reversible, meaning I would finish the rug as a regular mat and then add the tongues on. That way, if it goes out of style, it's easy to take off. That would be how I would do it. And then as far as sewing the tongues, it's going to be look up any embroidery or wool applique site and follow their instructions on what to do there. Oh, Sonia says the hook guns are the best. You all come. I hope you come. Gwen says, what type of finish should I use for a rug I want to hang? What is the best way to hang a rug? Okay, so two different questions. The first one, I don't think it matters what finish you use for hanging. I really don't. What's the best way to hang a rug? And how can I do this? Okay, so I haven't used these down. I might not be using this down camera. I'm going to move this out of the way. And then I'm going to move this camera over this way. And I'm going to take this off so y'all can see. Okay, so this is just, it looks like those screws, looks like I buggered up the drywall there. So I'm going to have my husband re-drill for that. But basically, it's just attached on two screws. And it's just hung there like it was a picture. And then the rug gets attached to those carpet tacks. Now, those carpet tacks are just ordinary wood, okay? And the wood that's behind it was some scrap poplar that we had. It's 1x material, nothing fancy, and it's made to match the outside perimeter of the rug, just slightly smaller than what the rug is. Then when you nail on these carpet tacks, you want the nails. There's a direction. You know, if you've got the bottom wood for the carpet tack here, the nails are going this way or they're going this way. And you're going to want to flip it around and do it so that it's always pointing out. So the top ones point up, the side ones point up, and the bottom ones point down. And then if your rug is any kind of size, I add those intermediate bars. And on those, the little tacks always point up. So what the advantage is that the rug is only the weight of this much of the rug is being held by the carpet tacks. I've seen some really large rugs that people have just put a sleeve in and have hung it that way. Now that works for quilts, but a quilt is much lighter than a rug. I don't think it works as good on a rug. So I like these intermediate supports, and you can put them as often as you need to. Now, the most important thing is that this is wood. Wood and wool are not good bedfellows. So what you need to do is to put a coat of spray varnish on that wood so it doesn't eat your wool. Okay? If you want to be more careful with it, you could sit in there with a little paintbrush and paint the whole dang thing. I've never done that. I've just hit it with some spray varnish, and that's enough to prevent the gases from the wood from getting on the wool. Okay? Let me see if I can spin this back. There we go. Whoops. Oh, that would be bad. Fall down on camera. Oh. That's how I hang rugs. Now, unless it's a really small rug. Okay, so I can show you this one over here behind the door. This one's being difficult. Okay, so this one is a little bit harder. It would take quite a while to build a wooden frame for this. So, and it's not that big. So what I did instead is I used acid-free foam core, okay? Cut it out roughly to the size. Cut out the center because I don't need it to go everywhere, and I want this to be able to breathe. And then I just did stitching to hold it on. This is completely reversible. I can pick this off and get rid of it if I need to, but it works really good. And then it literally just sits on a nail on the wall. That's a great way to do it. Now, with those carpet tack strips, I know some people pound them into the wall, but that's going to do a lot of damage on your drywall. And if you have plaster like I do, that could be a disaster. So I like 2 simple holes that hold it up, and it holds the way you would hang any large picture. Okay. Paula says, just join the rug cooking journey. I'm so excited. Well, thank you, Paula. Heather says, just saw a rug online where the hooker had used 3 rows of whipped edges instead of the usual one. Have you ever whipped more than one edge on a rug? Well, let me show you. I did this much. I will never, ever do this much again. Okay, let me explain why. Okay, so normally what they did, if they did 3 rows, they did 2 rows like this, and then they did a regular finish. Okay, of course I didn't leave enough room. I was just experimenting. I wanted to see how much time this took. This is incredibly time consuming. I'm not sure it adds that much other than a novelty. It's different. But from a design point of view, I don't think it adds that much compared to the amount of work it takes, okay? Because in whipping, you're working with it this way, right? And you poke in, and then you go around and you poke in. Well, to get a wrap of yarn this way, you got to poke up and then poke down, and then poke up and then poke down. Double the amount of work, quadrupling the amount of work if you're adding 2 more of these, right? So no, I don't do it. Experiment. What I recommend, okay, I have these as teaching samples. I recommend that if you're considering a finish, do yourself a little sample. Try it, okay? Because if you try it on a little piece like this or on a coaster like this, and it doesn't work out, or you don't like it, you can either tough through it for the rest of it, or you just throw the whole thing away. But you haven't messed up your rug. Okay, so don't do the first time you do a finish on a hooked rug that took you months, right? Hook up some little thing like this that you can hook up in an afternoon and then do your test on that. Okay, best advice I can give you on finishing. How to make labels for finished rugs. Okay, well, that's easier than what I used to do. And once again, if you go to my website and go to the search box and do label, or even faster than that, if you go to Google and you type in my name, type in Cindy Gay label, boom, the article will come up. Type in Cindy Gay finishing, boom, my best articles will come up. All of that will get you there a little bit faster. But what you do is you go to the store and you can use your Hobby Lobby coupon or your Joann coupon, and you're going to go to the quilting department. And you don't want an iron on. I'll say it again. You don't want an iron on. They're incredibly difficult to sew through. It's kind of old tech. The new ones you can print directly on the fabric. Make sure you print it on paper. Make sure, my rule for me personally is I never print it on paper and fabric in the same day. I print it on paper, I look at it, I go to bed, I wake up in the morning, I look at it again and go, oh crap, I missed an error. I fix it, I go to bed, I wake up, is it still perfect? Then, and only then, do I print it on fabric. You can usually get 2 labels on one piece of fabric very easily. In my article on doing labels will give you everything you need to know on how to do that, including, I had a sample out. Yep, here we go. Including a handy dandy little trick, which is this. I'm using red dot only because it makes it easier for you to see it. But you would use a spent dryer sheet and you would sew that on so that it's right on top of the finished area. And then you pull it apart and you snip it and you cut it enough, and then you trim your seams, and then you turn it inside out, and then you iron it. And then when you go to sew it on, you don't have to wrestle with the seams. Easiest way ever to do a label. Takes a little bit of time up front, but it'll make the process so much smoother, and you'll end up with a nice, crisp, even label, and none of the frustration of sewing it on. Okay. Debbie says, if you are using the fold forward finish with lining and adding cording, where do you put the cording? I normally use rugwort, but have some patterns that are on linen. That's true. You do need a piece of cording. This is the size cording that I think you need. So think iPhone cords. It's that thickness. You just need a little bit. You don't need a piece of cording that's this thick, okay? You need this kind of cording for other finishes, but not for the fold forward. Because when you've got the linen and you fold it once, and then you fold it the second time, it still smashes pretty flat. So what I do is I fold it the first time, I get everything basted down, and then I put the cording in and fold over the second time and baste it down. It's the easiest way to do it, because then you don't have to worry about where to put it so that it's in the right place when you fold it. Just fold it the first time, stitch everything down, then lay the cording in, and then bring the second fold over it and baste it down. And what that does is it creates a support for the backing. Now, I did a video about the knife fold edge of backing, and I don't remember if that's on public YouTube or if it's just in the Rug Hooking Journey. But where your backing gets folded into a knife edge, meaning it's really sharp out there, it's not supported by anything, that is where it's going to rot. Even if no one ever walks on it. This is a time issue. And unless you've got a way of stopping time, this is going to happen to you. This is where it's going to rot. That's why when museums are storing textiles, they never store them folded. They'll take big tubes and they'll put if they have to fold it because it's super big, they'll fold it over a tube. So that little piece of cording, where the devil did that one go? Here we go. No. Oh, it's in here. This little piece of cording, when you put that in the second fold and then fold over it, that is in there preventing that linen from smashing flat. Now, the reason you don't need it for rugwarp is so thick that when you fold it the second time, it is rounded. It never squishes flat. So you don't need that for rugwarp. It's thick enough. But you need a little bit of extra help. Now, what if you can't get out and get, this kind of cording? Okay, this is going to be a little harder to find. This is traverse cord. Back in the 60s, my mom had curtains like this, where you pull on them. And this is the kind of cord that they used. You can use anything that will provide this level of support and this diameter. In a pinch for a small rug, I've taken some yarn, I've done a chain stitch, and I've put that in there. You just have to be a little bit creative, but you need something with some bulk that's not going to squish, that will hold that corner and keep it nice and round. So there you go with that. Cherie said, could we baste the fold forward edges with a sewing machine? You can if you don't care about the edge of your rug. The reason I say that sort of sarcastically, the sewing machine is very destructive. It comes down and it pierces the fibers, and it's going to break a few along the way. Hand stitching is more gentle. The other thing too is you've got a great big old giant rug and you're trying to get that through the sewing machine without it twerking or twisting. Good luck on that. The time you spend and the damage that you do is not worth the trouble to sit there and do it by hand. Okay, so just do it by hand. Big old stitches, just enough to hold it into place. It doesn't have to be fine stitching. You've got a lot more control over it. And if it does get goofed up and you need to rip it out, you're not destroying your backing as you rip it out. The only place I use a sewing machine is to do the zigzagging at the very edge. Okay. Vicky is saying, do you use yarn on your fold forward method even if you are planning, even if you are planning to put the rug on the floor? Does it wear as well as the wool? Okay, the thing to remember, I'm using wool yarn. So yes, it's going to wear just as good as the wool fabric. I've had some whip rugs on the floor for 20 years. They don't show an inch of trouble. Now, some of the ones that I use Patternayan needlepoint wool on in the very beginning, those look like they're pilling up a little bit and there's a little bit of something going on. But once I found Cascade 220, I've never had trouble with them. They stay nice and clean. They don't seem to wear. It's a great finish. It holds up to the vacuum cleaner because, yes, I vacuum my rugs. How else are you going to get them clean? Yes, I vacuum them. Joan is saying, for a table mat, would you do an invisible finish like you have used for your stair risers or the fold forward? My rule of thumb, I always use the fold forward unless I have a reason not to. Now, my reason not to on the stair risers is that I don't want to give up a 1/2 inch of design space because I'm very limited on the height of that stair riser. And if I have to shrink my design to allow for a 1/4 inch at the top and a 1/4 inch at the bottom of whipping, I've lost a 1/2 inch of design space. And when you're only dealing with like 6, 7 inches at the most, usually 6, because 7 from the top of the first stair to the top of the next one is code, and then you've got a 3/4 of an inch piece of wood, you've only got 6 inches to deal with. So I'll use the what I call the invisible finish for that, because it doesn't take up any space. But if I had unlimited, somehow I could change the properties of that, I would use the fold forward. The only reason I use it is to conserve the space. So for a table mat, I would use the fold forward. Heather says, when do you use map pins instead of carpet tacks? Okay, I use map pins, and if you don't know what she's talking about, I had one out the other day. Map pins are pins that are really only like this long. They're not as long as a pin like this. They look like these pins, but they're only like that long. Okay, that's like the entire height of a map pin. I only can use those on drywall. Okay, you cannot use those in plaster. I mean, you can try, but it ain't going in. You can only use them on drywall. And once you punch through the paint film and the paper film, it goes in pretty easily. And it holds amazingly well. It doesn't leave much of a hole. So if you're a renter, you can probably get away with it. I would not use map pins if it's something that it's a rug that I want to take with me a lot, you know, like the Village of Pemberville. I could probably map pin it to the wall because that wall happens to be drywall, one of the few in this house that are. But I take that rug whenever I go somewhere because I'm always upset when I go to a rug crooking class and the teacher that I'm taking doesn't have her most famous rug. So the Village of Pemberville comes with me all the time. So I need something that I can take off very easily. And you saw how easy it came off. And it goes back on just as fast. So if it's on and off because you're sharing it a lot, then I would build a frame for it. If it's one you're going to put on the wall, even if it's large, I have a 2.5 by 5 foot rug up there on the wall, and it's just held up with map pins, and it's held beautifully. So it really doesn't have to do with the size. It has to do with what's your wall type and how often do you want to take it off of that wall. Donna says, I happen to have an example of hanging a rug wrong. I can share it tomorrow. Yay, please do, Donna. I'd love to hear what your experience is on that. I'm sorry that it didn't work, but yeah, let's all learn from that and let's see what she's got going on. Magbus is saying, you are completely right about it takes so much time to do it. I did it on one of my rugs and won't do it again. And I'm assuming she's talking about this guy. Yeah. Cecilia says, I've watched your video on finishing stair risers using rug binding first, then attaching the Velcro. Why couldn't you just use the Velcro as the binding and omit the binding tape? Well, for one reason, it would not be reversible. The second that's a lot of Velcro and that stuff's expensive. And third, I can barely sew that stuff on. There is no way you're going to whip through it. No way in heck. No, there's no way you're going to do that. It sounds like a great idea, but no, you're not going to get through that. Marcy says, have you ever finished a rug with a binding, like a quilt binding, using thinner wool? Well, I've done it using thicker wool, and it's over there in the bin, but I thought, yeah, here. I've got sort of an example of that. This is what it would look like, where you've got a binding here. You can definitely do that. The advantage is that the backing is never folded, so there's no knife fold edge. So that makes it a desirable finish from that point of view. Makes it a little thick on the edge. That's why I prefer this finish. If you're using them on the floor, there's no thickness on the edge, nothing to trip over or get caught in a shoe. So there's a definite advantage there. So Jackie says, I have trouble whipping the corners when I do wool yarn to bind. Jackie, my information for you is Google Cindy Gay corner trick, okay? And it'll have an article there about what to do with the corners. Chances are what you're doing is what everybody who's ever whipped their first corner has done. Which, well, shoot, I've got my iPad right here. Let's fire up the iPad. I can do a much better illustration for you. And boom, here we go. Okay, so here is the corner, right? And you are whipping along and you get to that little sweet spot where it goes one way versus the other, where they perfectly intersect. And then what you are probably doing is this. And you're just filling in that poor little hole as far as you possibly can. And you're blowing out your corner. And then even when you whip it, it's still going to fall off that corner, right? Because it doesn't have anything to support it. So what the corner trick suggests is that you come up to the spot and the only thing that shares the same hole is one more whipping that frames up the corner. Once you've got that done, you're going to do 3 to 5 little stitches on the corner. And then there's an imaginary, there's an imaginary diagonal. And actually, if you fold it the right way, you can see it. You can just use that fold to kind of give you an idea. And then you start whipping it like this until it overlaps. And then you start whipping it this way and you come down this way and keep going. That is, in a nutshell, that is the corner trick. And it's laid out in complete detail in that article at cindygayrugcooking.com/FF for fold forward. Diana is saying, if using corner cording, I round my corners much easier than square corners. Just a suggestion. Yeah, and you can definitely do that. And you can take, like the cap off of a bottle and use that as your corner. You can take a cup, just find something, and then draw sort of a radius. And then when you're hooking, hook it with a rounded corner, and then you'll whip it with a rounded corner, and you're good to go. I did that on my room size rug, which I think I can show that to you. It's not really mobile, but I think I can push it this way. So here's a corner. And what I did is I slightly rounded it. And this edge has not been steamed yet, which is why it's kind of curling like that. But it'll lay flat once I steam it. I steamed the main part of the rug. I just haven't steamed after I whipped it. But that little bit of rounding, particularly on a big rug, I think is really nice. But it's a great way to simply avoid corners if you want to avoid corners. It's a great way to do that. Okay, so that's the end of the questions, but let me tell you a little bit more about the hook-in tomorrow. So it uses an app called Zoom. Now, the only thing tricky about Zoom is downloading it the first time. If you've never downloaded it, you're going to have to go through that process. So your best bet, let me fix this so that I can share with you my screen. Okay, so if you're a member of the rug hooking journey, and hang in there, because even if you're not, I'm going to show you a way around it. So if you're a member of the rug hooking journey, you're going to go to the dashboard. And if you already have Zoom, maybe you've used, oops, I didn't click on it. Maybe you've used Zoom for a guild meeting, or you've used it for a family meeting or something, you know, of that nature. All you have to do is come here and click this link. Boom, you're done. So what if you're not a member of the rug hooking journey, or I gotta click this screen, or you're not a member of any of my courses. So I'm going to log out so you can see what that looks like. If you're not logged in, this is what you're going to see. But you don't have a user ID and a password. No trouble. Keep scrolling. Oh, shit. Excuse the language. I thought it showed, last time I tested this, it showed those other things. So something must have changed. Oh, crap. I will make sure before tomorrow that there will be a link, and I'll put it right here, right below this area, and it'll say Zoom hook in, and you just click that link. But it is much easier if you have some kind of a user ID for the dashboard. Now, if you've ever registered for live reminders for this, you've got a user ID and a password. And so you can log in and you can get to this information. It's just that everything down here is grayed out, meaning you don't have access to it because you haven't bought in. But everybody has access to this part up in here. Now, one thing that someone had asked me about was, how do I know what lessons are new inside the rug hooking journey? So if we click here on events, my system's really slow when I'm broadcasting. Come on, there we go. It's going to take you to a calendar of events, so it'll show you what's going on next. This is linked to my personal private calendar, so if I have to cancel something right away, it'll show up in here. That's not what I wanted to show you, actually. I wanted to show you at what's new, right here, this part right here. So this shows you all the lessons that have been updated. Some of them have been created new, but some of them have just been updated. Like, for instance, in the basics, I found a video about hooking corners and tips, like tips of leaves. So I added that to the course, and I added it this morning. Okay, so you can always come here and see what's new. But what's really useful is once you're inside the class like this, is you can mark it as done after you've watched the video. And where is it? Right here. And it'll actually put a check mark next to it. So the next time you're into this particular course, you can see what lessons you have done and which ones you do not. Now I want to unmark it. It's supposed to say to reverse it. Okay, so sometimes things don't work. So, but once you mark it, it's checked off in that sidebar, and that makes it really handy because then you can always see what's going on. Okay. So that's it for tomorrow. The other way that you can get to the hook in is you can type in rug hook in, basically rug hooking without the G. Press enter and it'll take you to information about how to join the rug hook in. What time, Marcy? Thank you. 4 o'clock, just like this lesson, same time. It's always the day after the live lesson. So if you're used to doing live lessons on Tuesdays and Fridays, then Wednesday and Saturday are when the hook-ins are. Okay, so I hope you'll join me for that. Thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate you helping me to take my mind off things for about an hour or so. And I will see you all tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Yes, 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks. Bye, everybody.